Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome to the first joint meeting of the Assembly Committee on Revenue and the Senate Committee on Revenue and Economic Development. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Senator Dennis, Senator Ratty, Senator Kekeffer, Senator Severs-Gansert,
Here.
Chair Neal,
Here.
Assemblywoman Anderson,
Here.
Assemblywoman Benitez-Thompson,
Here.
Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod,
Here.
Assemblywoman Considine, Assemblyman Hafen,
Here.
Assemblywoman Kasama,
Here.
Assemblyman Miller,
Present.
Assemblyman O'Neill, Assemblyman Ortlicker,
Here.
Assemblyman Roberts,
Here.
Assemblyman Yeager,
Here.
Chair Cohen.
Thank you. And I am here. Madam Secretary, please mark the members who are in other meetings present as they arrive. So I'd like to welcome everyone watching or listening over the internet to this virtual meeting. Our meeting for the time being will be held in this format only, with Assembly Revenue meeting times regularly scheduled for 4 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and Senate Revenue and Economic Development meetings are normally on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 1 p.m. So thank you, Senators, for joining us. Before we begin, I'd like to go over some housekeeping. Members and presenters, please silence your electronic devices. Courtesy and respect in our interactions during the meeting is required. Additionally, courtesy and respect when working with staff before and after the meeting is required. Committee members will be using laptops and possibly other screens and devices to not only participate in this meeting virtually, but to view exhibits. Due to that, you may see members looking at multiple screens or hard copies of printouts or the like. So please don't take that as a sign of inattention or disrespect. We're just still trying to navigate our way through this new reality of virtual committee meetings. As a reminder, and as stated on our agenda, we will have public comment, which will occur at the end of the meeting and may be limited in duration. Details on how to participate during public comment are available on Nellis. We're now going to move on to our presentations. For the public, you can find the exhibits brought by the presenters also on Nellis. The first presentation is from the Department of Taxation, and presenting is Executive Director Melanie Young. Executive Director Young, please go ahead.
Thank you. For the record, Melanie Young, and I just want to confirm that you can hear me. All right, thank you. So greetings, members of the committees. Again, for the record, my name is Melanie Young, Executive Director for the Nevada Department of Taxation, and with me here today are members of my executive team. We do have a lot of information to cover, and to keep the presentation in the allotted time, this is intended to be a high-level overview. Also, tax may be a simple three-letter word, but it's a complicated subject. So we would like to offer, if there's a need to go deeper into specific subjects, we would be willing to come back and provide additional information or presentations on those subjects. So at this point in time, I'm going to share my screen and bring up my presentation. So this is the agenda for our presentation. We will provide an overview of our agency, fiscal year 2020 revenues and distributions, changes that have affected the department since fiscal year 2015, and cover all the tax types, fees, and licenses listed here. This is a summary of our agency's operations, and the department's mission is to provide fair, efficient, and effective administration of tax programs for the state of Nevada. In fiscal year 2020, the department distributed $7.21 billion for 19 different taxes and various fees, licenses, and penalties. Starting in fiscal year 21, we no longer license or regulate medical or adult use of marijuana businesses. However, we are still responsible for the collection of the taxes. We are responsible for appraising property values of interstate, intercounty, and mining properties. We establish guidelines for county assessors, recorders, and treasurers. We review local government budgets, audits, and prepares the ad valorem tax rates. We advise local governments on the Budget Act and financial matters. And then our demographer certifies the annual population estimates for states, counties, incorporated cities, and towns. The department currently has 404 positions. The department is comprised of 5 divisions, and we serve as staff to 5 boards and commissions. This is an organizational structure of the department, showing our divisions and our boards and commissions. This is a listing of our office locations and contact information. And this is a list showing the different taxes and statutes the department collects and distributes revenue for. Additional details on these tax types can be found in the department's annual report. And this is one of our most informational slides here, showing our fiscal year 2020 revenue collections for the different tax types and the distributions. And again, we collect from 19 different taxes, numerous fees, penalties, and licenses, and each one of these funds essential government services. The funding is distributed to the general fund, local governments, and schools. The total distributed was $7.21 billion for fiscal year 2020. That number is slightly down from fiscal year 19 by $124 million, which is a reduction of 1.7%. The department collects 70% of the total state general fund revenue. For fiscal year 2020, it cost the general fund 48 cents to collect every $100. Put another way, this is just under a half a penny to collect $1. When we compare that to other non-income tax states like Washington, it costs 62 cents to collect every $100. And for Tennessee, it's 55 cents for every $100 collected. This is a distribution matrix, and it summarizes all of our tax types, the distributions, where they go. And we will go through each one of these tax types and their distributions in the coming slides. This here shows the other distribution totals for our department. Other than the state general fund, local governments, and schools, there are other small distributions that come through the department, and these next 2 slides outline that. This category represents the unique distributions, and the other category is represented as 172.1 million, and that represents 2.4% of our total distributions. And looking back at how the department has changed over the past 5 years, we compared data from fiscal year 2015 to fiscal years 2020. The commerce tax was implemented in the state legislative session of 2015, and in fiscal year 2020, we distributed $204 million, and we have 295,000 taxpayers still registered with the department. The wholesale and retail marijuana taxes were implemented in the 2017 legislative session, distributing over $105 million in fiscal year 2020. We have 418 taxpayers with filing obligations. Since fiscal year 2015, the department's revenue distributions has increased by $1.84 billion annually. And additionally, the department's taxpayer accounts with filing obligations has changed from June 30 of 2015, where we had 196,797 taxpayer accounts. To date, to June 30, 2020, we have 527,937 taxpayer accounts. This is a staggering increase of 329,140 taxpayers, an increase of 167.25%. This is a list of some of the major legislation passed from the 2019 session. AB 445, the Marketplace Facilitator Bill, was effective October in 2019. In fiscal year 2020, the department distributed $108 million in tax revenue from those businesses who are registered with the department as a marketplace facilitator. The defining factors of a marketplace facilitator are a forum, which include a shop, store, booth, catalog, internet site, or other forum of any electronic or physical infrastructure. The department has 1,015 accounts flagged as marketplace facilitators. Senate Bill 263 imposed the 30% wholesale tax on other tobacco products and was implemented effective January 1 of 2020. The taxes distributed in fiscal year 2020 saw an increase of 28.18% from fiscal year 2019 of $5.1 million. AB 535 imposed a licensing fee structure on all cigarettes and other tobacco product businesses. This was effective January 1 of 2020, and the department licensed 3,353 total licensees, bringing in $340,000 in additional revenue. AB 533 transitioned the Marijuana Enforcement Division to the Cannabis Compliance Board, which was finalized in July of 2020. The department and the Cannabis Compliance Board meet at least quarterly to discuss topics that cross over both agencies. SB 497 was an efficiency measure brought about by the department, which eliminated the requirement for businesses whose gross revenue was under $4 million to file a commerce tax return with the department. We saw a 50% reduction in taxpayer accounts registered with the department from fiscal year 2019. The Tax Amnesty Program, authorized in Senate Bill 3 from the 31st special session, as recorded by the State Economic Forum at its December 2020 meeting, is anticipated to generate $14 million in revenue for the state general fund and $7 million for the distributive school account. The department has announced the Amnesty Program starting February 1st through May 1st. And to summarize Senate Bill 3, the Tax Amnesty Program requires the department to relieve a person who has not paid a tax, fee, or assessment collected by the Department of Taxation of all monetary penalties and interest imposed during the program period of not more than 90 days. If first, the person requests relief from the department, and second, pays the tax, fee, or assessment in full for the period. It's important to note that this does not include taxes such as the real property transfer tax, property taxes, lodging taxes, or taxes that are not directly remitted to the department. The goals of the Amnesty Program is to reduce the tax debt owed to the state and provide an influx of funding to state, local governments, and schools. The second goal is to help bring taxpayers into compliance. The benefit to the taxpayers paying the tax debt owed to the state and ending the department's collection efforts. Additionally, interest would not continue to accrue on taxpayer accounts, which would decrease their debt burden. Since the passage of Senate Bill 3 in July of 2020, the department has worked to implement the Amnesty Program. First, we developed the ability for an electronic submission where taxpayers can apply and pay through our online portal. And then with the expanded ability for electronic submission, more taxpayers may be able to access this program. Alternatively, for those that do not have the ability to submit electronically, taxpayers will still have the option for a manual submission to the department. Then the department developed a multifaceted communication plan to announce the start of the program. In December, the department placed information on our website along with frequently asked questions. And then we mailed out paper notices in tax returns that for the January 2021 monthly mailings. In January, we made announcements that were emailed through the department's listserv, posts on social media via Twitter, as well as the press release was provided to the media. Additionally, announcements of the program have been sent in various newsletters from the governor's office, business and industries, the Federation of Tax Administrators, and the Nevada Taxpayers Association. As well as ongoing through the 90-day program, we will provide frequent notices via email, social media outlets to continue providing important information and reach the taxpayers who are in need of this program. Finally, the changes to the net proceeds of mineral taxes imposed in Senate Bill 3. The department held workshops with the industry, modified the forms and instructions, which were approved by the Nevada Tax Commission, and the forms were sent to the industry and are due to the department in March, along with an estimated payment for next year. The current year payments will be due May 10th. We will move on to major general fund tax types. Sales and use tax has 5 allocation components. The base tax rate for Nevada is 6.85%, which is made up of the 2% sales tax, which goes to the state general fund, where the department distributed $1.21 billion in fiscal year 2020. Then there is a 2.6% known as the local school support tax. In fiscal year 2020, the department distributed $1.33 billion to school districts where businesses are located. Tax returns from out-of-state businesses distribute to the state distributive school account, and in fiscal year 2020, we distributed $229.78 million. There is a general fund commission of 0.75%, which distributed $11.77 million to the general fund. Then there's a 0.5% for basic city county relief tax, and in fiscal year 2020, the distribution was $295.02 million. In-state sales are distributed to counties where the sales or delivery are made. Out-of-state sales are distributed based upon the population ratio through the consolidated tax program to the local governments. There is a 1.75 commission where $5.2 million was distributed to the general fund. Next is a 1.75% for supplemental city county relief tax. And in fiscal year 2020, that distribution was $1.03 billion to local governments based on the consolidated tax program formula. And there is a 1.75% commission, which distributed $18.3 million to the general fund. Finally, there is an option tax, and this is a multi-component tax, which allows the county the ability to impose a tax for pursuant to NRS 374A up to 1/8% for the cost of extraordinary maintenance, repairs, or improvements of school facilities. Then, pursuant to NRS 377A.020, there is a 0.25% tax for mass transit or the construction of public roads, or in a county where the population is less than 400,000 for the promotion of tourism. Next, the pursuant to NRS 377B.100, a county under certain population requirements may impose a 0.25% tax for infrastructure. Next, NRS 543.600 provide for a 0.25% tax for flood control. The most recent change was implemented in AB 309 from the 2019 legislative session, which is codified into NRS 377D, which allows an option tax for miscellaneous local purposes. Clark County implemented this provision for educational programs effective January 1 in 2020, which brought in an additional $23.2 million. The department distributed $776.2 million in state fiscal year 2020 and local option taxes. There is a 1.75% commission, which is distributed $13.8 million to the general fund. On our On page 27 of our annual report is a breakdown of all the local governments that have option taxes. This slide is a good visual representation of the sales and use tax rates for each county. Next, we will move on to modified business tax. The modified business tax's total distribution for fiscal year 2020 was $642.74 million, which was an increase of $2.2 million over fiscal year 2019. This tax is imposed on general businesses, financial institutions, and any entities subject to net proceeds of minerals. The general business tax rate is 1.475% after healthcare deductions if the sum of all wages exceed $50,000 per calendar quarter. General business represents 91% of the revenue distributed. The rate for financial institutions and entities subject to net proceeds of minerals is 2% on gross wages, with a deduction for qualified health insurance or qualified health benefit plan. This is a quarterly tax, and the financial institutions represent 5%, where mining represents 4% of the revenue distributed. This tax is distributed to the general fund. The commerce tax was enacted in the 2015 legislative session. This tax is imposed on each entity engaged in business in the state whose gross revenue exceeds $4 million. The rate is based on the industry that the business is primarily engaged in. In state fiscal year 2020, the department distributed $204.98 million to the state general fund. This was a decline of 9.6% from fiscal year 2019. 3 industries made up half of all the distributions. In fiscal year 2020, $41.2 million came from retail trade, $36.8 million was from wholesale trade, and $20.4 million was from manufacturing. In prior years, commerce tax distributions, accommodations held the 3rd highest spot, but because of the pandemic, accommodations fell to 4th and manufacturing rose to 3rd. In fiscal year 2020, businesses claimed $50.84 million in modified business tax credits against the commerce tax. Moving on to insurance premium tax. The department began collecting the insurance premium tax in 1993. The department distributed $435.46 million to the general fund in fiscal year 2020, and this is an increase of 6.32% over fiscal year 2019. A rate of 3.5% is imposed on insurers for transacting business in the state. However, in June 2005, a rate was reduced to 2% for risk retention groups. This tax is assessed upon net direct premiums and net direct considerations written. The premium tax is due to the department on March 15th of each year on premiums written in the prior calendar year. However, insurers who are required to pay a tax of at least $2,000 from the preceding calendar year must pay quarterly for the tax payments based on the actual net direct premiums and net direct considerations written for the current reporting period. There was a home office credit, which was eliminated as of December 31st, 2020. The Department of Taxation collects live entertainment tax that is not a part of a gaming establishment. This tax was enacted by the 2003 legislative session. The department distributed $19.4 million in fiscal year 2020. This was a reduction of 24.56% over fiscal year 2019. The department has received numerous refund requests which have impacted the fiscal year 2021 through November distributions, where we've only distributed $548,000 after those refunds. The funding is distributed to the general fund, except for the first $150,000 is an annual distribution to the Nevada Arts Council. This tax is due upon the sale of a live entertainment ticket, which some venues have started planning for their calendar year 2021 events and selling tickets. The department may continue to receive refund requests if those events end up canceling, which would require the department to either reduce the distribution to cover the refunds or recoup funds that were previously distributed to the general fund. The real property transfer tax was enacted in 1967. The department distributed 143.1 million, which is a slight reduction over 2019 of 0.79%. The rate is $1.95 on each $500 in value for the transfer of real property, except in Churchill and Washoe counties, where the rate is $2.05, and in Clark County, the rate is $2.55. This revenue is collected by the county recorders and remitted to the department on a form prescribed by the Nevada Tax Commission. The distribution is $1.30 to the state general fund. 55 cents is distributed to counties through the consolidated tax. 10 cents is distributed to the account for low-income housing. Churchill and Washoe counties distribute the additional 10 cents for the Local Governments Tax Act, and Clark County distributes the additional 60 cents to the school districts. The department determines the tax on the net proceeds of minerals pursuant to NRS 362. Producers report annually the gross yield of each separate extractive operation, as well as expenses related to extraction, processing, transportation, and marketing of the minerals. Royalty recipients report only the amount of royalties received. The minimum tax rate is 2%, or the combined property tax rate where the business is located. The maximum tax rate is 5%, which is applied to the net proceeds in excess of $4 million annually into all royalties. Taxpayers are required to report the current year's taxes, and then the department certifies and bills the net proceeds each year in April with the final payment due May 10th. There are approximately 103 net proceeds operators currently reporting to the department, as well as 388 royalty reporters. The distribution of net proceeds of minerals for fiscal year 2020 was $122.45 million, where the general fund received $57.16 million, local governments received $61.06 million, and $4.23 million was distributed to the State Debt Service Fund. Due to the passage of Senate Bill 3 from the 31st special session, net proceeds of mineral taxpayers will make an extra estimated payment this fiscal year for the general fund portion only. The prepayment will continue until the method of determining the taxes due returns to the actual net proceeds starting in calendar year 2024. We will move on to our other tax types. This slide details the cigarette and other tobacco products revenue. Cigarette tax was originally enacted in the 1947 legislative session. The tax rate is 90 mils per cigarette, and the other tobacco products is a 30% of manufacturer's wholesale price. The distribution is 5 mils per cigarette to eligible local governments through the consolidated tax distribution, and 85 mils per cigarette to the state general fund, less the administrative fees determined by the legislature and is appropriated to fund the enforcement efforts of the department. Other tobacco products is distributed to the state general fund. Assembly Bill 535 from the 2019 legislative session revised the wholesale cigarette dealer licensing fees and established licensing fees for cigarette manufacturers, wholesale dealers, and other tobacco products and tobacco retailers. As you can see here, the listing and the prices of each license. This bill was effective in October 2019, where the licensing portion was effective January 1, 2020. And again, the department licensed 3,353 total licensees, bringing in 340,000 in new revenue. In the 2019 legislative session, again, vapor products and alternative nicotine products were added to the definition of other tobacco products, which includes electronic cigarettes, cigars, cigarillos, pipes, hookahs, vape pens, similar products and components. The effective date of SB 263 was January 1, 2020, and the taxes distributed for other tobacco products saw the increase from over 2019 of $5.1 million. The total taxes, fees, and licenses distributed in fiscal year 2020 was $189.8 million, where $9.2 million was distributed to local governments, and the remaining was distributed to the general fund and the Department of Taxation for collecting the cigarette tax. Moving on to liquor taxes, fees, and fines. The tax was originally enacted in 1935 as a stamp tax. Liquor tax rates is $3.60 per gallon of 20% alcohol content by volume. Then 14% to 22% alcohol content by volume is $1.30 per gallon. Alcohol content of 0.5% to 14% is 70 cents per gallon, and beer is 16 cents per gallon. Licensing ranges from $50 for a certificate of compliance to an importer of $500. The progressive fines start at $500 and graduate to $5,000 by the third offense. The liquor tax collections, the total taxes, fees, and fines for fiscal year 2020 were $47.08 million, where $42.31 million was distributed to the state general fund, and this was a reduction of 5.64% over fiscal year 2019. This table demonstrates the detailed distributions for the liquor tax revenue, where $3.6 million was distributed to local governments, and the remaining was distributed to the liquor program account, the Victims for Domestic Violence, and community juvenile justice programs. Moving on to marijuana taxes, fees, and fines. The wholesale marijuana tax is a 15% tax on the fair market value of products at wholesale. The fair market value is set by the department every 6 months. The retail marijuana tax is a 10% tax on the adult use sales of marijuana and marijuana-infused products. Additional fees are imposed for applications, licensing, agent cards, time and effort billing, and civil penalties. As of July 1, 2020, these fees imposed have been transferred to the Cannabis Compliance Board. However, the department will continue to collect the wholesale marijuana and retail marijuana taxes. The department started collecting retail marijuana taxes and wholesale marijuana taxes in fiscal year 2018. In fiscal year 2020, the department distributed $60.41 million, which is an increase of 9.47% for retail marijuana taxes. That is an increase of 9.47% over fiscal year 2019. Similarly, the department collects the wholesale marijuana tax, which is a 50% tax on the fair market value of marijuana at wholesale. This tax is an obligation of cultivation facilities and is levied on the first transfer of marijuana. In fiscal year 2020, the department distributed $44.7 million, which is an increase of 1.34% over fiscal year 2019. Previous to fiscal year 2019, the marijuana revenue, retail marijuana revenue, was distributed to the account to stabilize the operation of the state government, otherwise known as the Rainy Day Fund. Effective July 1, 2019, the revenue is now being distributed to the state distributive school account. The wholesale marijuana funding starting July 1 of 2020 is now being distributed to the Cannabis Compliance Board, which is used to pay their costs first. Then there's $5 million distributed to local governments, and the remaining funding at fiscal year at year end is distributed to the distributive school account. Collectively, between these two tax types for fiscal year 2020, the distribution was for the distributive school account was $100.15 million. Distributed to local governments was $5 million. Distributed to the Department of Taxation was $4.8 million, and that was to cover the cost of operating and overseeing the cannabis industry. The transfer to the Health Division was $335.41 thousand, and then there was a transfer to the Attorney General's office of $134.57 thousand. Moving on to lodging tax. This covers lodging tax that's received by the Department of Taxation. Lodging taxes are remitted to local governments, and certain percentages are distributed to the Department of Taxation to be distributed to the Tourism Promotion Fund and the State Supplemental School Fund. The amount received by the department in state fiscal year 2020 was $157.1 million, and this was a reduction of 24.64% from fiscal year 2019. There are 3 rates imposed for the distribution to the state, and the first rate is 1% of the gross receipts in a county with a population of less than 700,000. The second rate is a 2% of the gross receipts in a county with population of 700,000 or more. And the third is an additional rate of 3% of gross receipts in a county whose population is greater than 300,000. Then the distribution on this one is counties whose population is 700,000 or more. 3/8 of 1% is distributed to the state, to the Fund for the Promotion of Tourism. The remaining 5/8 of 1% is distributed to the county treasurer, to the county school districts for capital projects. In counties whose population is less than 700,000, 3/8 of 1% is distributed to the state to fund the promotion of tourism. The remaining 5/8 of 1% must be deposited with the county fair or recreation board. If no board exists, the funding goes to the county commissioners to be used to advertise resources in that county related to tourism. The additional 3% tax in counties whose population is greater than 300,000 is deposited to the State Supplemental School Support Fund. Next, the department is responsible for the centrally assessed valuation, assessment, collection, and distribution of property taxes related to property of an interstate or inter-county nature. This includes approximately 297 interstate or inter-county properties owned by airlines, railroads, telecommunications, electric power, gas pipelines, private car lines, and water companies. These funds are distributed to local governments, the State Debt Service Fund, and the Renewable Energy Account, and a small amount to the general fund. This next tax is a fee imposed on the short-term car lease of a passenger vehicle. The fee is 10% and is due on a quarterly basis. Additionally, effective April 1, 2004, Washoe County imposed a fee at the rate of 2% of the lease charge, where 0.25% of that amount going to the Department of Taxation for a collection allowance. And then effective July 1 of 2005, Clark County imposed the fee at the rate of 2% of a lease charge, with 0.1% of that money going to the department for the collection allowance. In fiscal year 2020, $45.2 million was distributed to the general fund, $1.44 million to Washoe County, and $7.3 million to Clark County, and $10,972 is the collection allowance for the department. The fiscal year 2020 distributions are down 20.91% over fiscal year 2019. Next is the Transportation Connection Tax, which was enacted in the 2015 legislative session. This tax imposes an excise tax on the transportation of a passenger by a transportation network company, common motor carrier of passengers or taxi cabs at the rate of 3% of the total fare charged. The first $5 million every biennium is distributed to the State Highway Fund, and the remaining is distributed to the State General Fund. In fiscal year 2020, the department distributed $24.87 million, which is a 17.7% reduction over fiscal year 2019. Next is the excise tax, which was enacted in the 2003 legislative session. This tax is imposed on each bank at the rate of $1,750 for each branch in excess of one maintained in any county on the first day of each calendar quarter. The distribution is to the State General Fund, and in fiscal year 2020, the department distributed $2.6 million, and this is a reduction of 6.91% over fiscal year 2019. This is a fee. The tire fee is imposed on the retail sale of a new tire at the rate of $1 per tire. The fee is collected from the purchaser by the seller at the time of sale, in addition to applicable sales taxes. 95% of the fee is remitted to the department. 5% is retained by the seller to cover the related administrative cost. The revenue is distributed to the department to be deposited for the credit of the solid waste management account in the State General Fund. The state controller distributes quarterly 0.5% to the Department of Taxation, 44.5% to the State Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, 30% to Clark County District Board of Health, and 25% to Washoe County District Board of Health. In fiscal year 2020, the department distributed $2.05 million, which is a reduction of 3.08% over fiscal year 2019. And finally, our last slide. The exhibition facility fee is a $5,000 annual fee. However, alternatively, if the fee is paid quarterly, the fee is equal to the number of businesses without a state business license taking part in an exhibition. And that is calculated by multiplying the number of days that business is participating in the exhibition multiplied by $1.25. This distribution is to the State General Fund, and in fiscal year 2020, the department distributed $180,872, which is a reduction over fiscal year 2019 of 2.99%. And thank you. This concludes our presentation. I know I threw a lot of information out to you, and we are available for questions.
Thank you, Executive Director Young. I do have questions. The order so far is Senator Neal, Assemblyman Roberts, and then Assemblywoman Anderson. So let's start with Senator Neal. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Young, I have two separate questions. The first is on the LET. Do you know the origin of the sports exemption in the LET, like minutes or the origin of the creation of it? Do you just want me to go to my second question, even though it's a different topic?
So let me restate your question on the first one. So you're asking.
And I'm sorry, could you also just remember to restate your name? Thank you.
Yes, I apologize. Melanie Young, Executive Director. To restate your question, Senator Neal, you're asking for the LET, the origin of the sports exemption?
Yeah, who created it? Someone said that there were minutes that proved that I guess there was a reasoning or public policy purpose behind it. I haven't been able to find it, so I was wondering if you know where that could possibly be.
Again, Melanie Young, Executive Director, for the record. I do not have that information on me, but I could have my staff do some researching if you would like.
Okay. Thank you for that. And then my second question is on the slide 18, the economic development distribution, the economic development district distribution. When does the MBT expire in terms of being distributed to TRIC?
If, again, Melanie Young, Executive Director, for the record, if I could turn that question over to my Chief Deputy Director, Shelley Hughes. I think she has the answer to both of your questions.
Good afternoon, Senator Neal. This is Shelley Hughes, Chief Deputy for the Department of Taxation. For your first question, for the exemption for professional sports teams, I did some research and I saw that it was added to NRS 360A 200, subsection 4O, with Senate Bill 266 in the 2015 session. And in particularly, it was added with amendment number 1036, and that was in the Senate Revenue and Economic Development minutes of May 28, 2015. And basically those minutes say the next relevant change is the exemption of professional sports teams, as long as the team is based in Nevada and the home-based team is a participant in the contest. Previously, the exemption applied only to minor league baseball. Proposed amendment to SB 266 extends the exemption to Nevada-based professional athletic teams in the events they conduct.
Thank you. Good to know.
And as to your second question, you were asking about when does the distribution of MBT to Tesla expire? That question I would have to get back to you on. I don't have that information available right now, but we can get that answer to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. With that, we'll go to Assemblyman Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a couple questions on slide 29 about the liquor taxes. And so at the top, you have the rates that are graduated based on the alcohol volume. And so one question that I have is that retail and wholesale or just one or the other?
Thank you, Melanie Young, Executive Director, for the record. I do have my deputy, Terry Upton, who is over that section, and she should be able to answer that question. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Terry Upton, Deputy of Compliance for the department. That tax is on the supplier to the wholesaler. There is a sales tax on the retail sale of liquor. These rates are on the distribution of the liquor.
Thank you. And I you may not know, and if you don't, that's not a big deal. I'm just curious as to when this graduated scale was adopted. Was it back in the 30s when they originally adopted a tax, or has it been changed or adjusted since then? And if you don't know, that's not a big issue. I can always get it later.
It has been adjusted. I just don't know the dates.
Okay. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
If you do get that, if you could send that to me, I'd really appreciate it.
Okay, I'd be happy to.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And for the record, that was Ms. Upton. Next, we will go to Assemblywoman Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Executive Director Young, thank you for the presentation, eye-opening in so many parts. So I'm going to be asking I think it's a simple question that I'm not sure. On slide 29 and 30, there's mention of fines. So and I think that was with alcohol, but I believe later there's another mention of fines when it comes to other entities, Who sets those fines? And also, when was very similar to Assemblymember Roberts' last comment, when was the last time those fines were looked at? And then also, what percentage of the budget for those separate departments are based on those fines, if that information is available?
Thank you, Melanie Young, Executive Director, for the record. Great questions. Terry Upton should be able to answer most of those. If we don't have those for you today, we'll be able to get those for you.
Yes, thank you. Terry Upton for the record. The fine for other tobacco products and cigarettes was adjusted in the last session with SB 81. And for liquor, I do not have an answer for you on when those fines were adjusted. The fines are set by statute. And I'm not certain about your third question. And if you could repeat that, I will make sure to note it and get you an answer on that. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for that, the quick responses with it. What percentage, is there any sort of budget that is based upon these fines or an anticipation based upon past practices is kind of where that's coming from.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and if you could just share the responses with the full committee, we appreciate it, or send it to me or staff and we'll distribute it. Okay, with that, I will go to Assemblyman Ortlicker.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Ms. Young, for your presentation. I'm curious, we have the commerce tax and the modified business tax, and one's based on revenue, the other's on payroll, and just curious about the economic logic of taxing them both as opposed to just taxing one of them more. Is there an economic logic there, or what drives that?
Thank you, Melanie Young, Executive Director for the Nevada Department of Taxation. Unfortunately, I wasn't a part of the decision-making process when those taxes were implemented. So I would probably have to defer to your legislative staff, your tax team, to maybe provide some information on that.
If any of them are available to answer that question or recall that.
Madam Chair, this is your staff, Russell Giddon. And so I don't know that I can totally answer the Assemblyman's question, but what I can tell you is just sort of provide the committee members the historical perspective that the modified business tax, or as we refer to it as the MBT, was first put in place in the 2003 special session. So obviously it significantly predates the commerce tax being put in place in the 2015 session. So as to the economic logic, that's the difficult part to answer because the legislature in its deliberations made the decision to put the modified business tax in place in 2003 to generate revenue for the state to be able to fund its general fund budget, and then made the decision in 2015. In 2015 session, the modified business taxes were raised, and that's when they also put in place the commerce tax. But there is a credit mechanism of that 50% of the commerce tax that you paid can be taken as a credit against your modified business tax. So in some sense, that would be possibly what I would offer to you is somewhat of an economic logic, or the logic is that yes, the ones on payroll, the ones on gross receipts, but then you're trying to get some balance by allowing a credit of the commerce tax back against the modified business tax. That is those that are paying the wage tax.
Thank you, Mr. Ginden. Assemblyman Ortlicker, any follow-up?
No, but thanks for asking.
Okay. With that, we will move to Assemblyman Yeager, and then I don't have anyone else on the list. So if you do have a question, please let me know.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If you allow, I have just a couple questions. I don't think they'll be too complicated. It's good to see you, Director Young, and I was thinking back to working with you and Ms. Hughes on the Cannabis Compliance Board legislation, and just wanted to say thank you again for making that happen. And my first question is related to that piece of legislation. Obviously, there were a lot of reasons we processed that bill and passed it, but one of them was to free up the Department of Taxation to not have to be burdened with all the regulatory side of the cannabis industry. And so I just wondered if that worked, has taken that off of your plate over at the Department of Taxation, led to you guys being able to do things more in the taxation realm rather than the cannabis regulation realm.
Thank you, Melanie Young, Executive Director, for the record, and Assemblyman Yeager. It was wonderful working with you last legislative session on that. And yes, it has. As soon as that passed, the department had started working on our strategic plan, and our executive team was working very diligently on what would have been our budget proposal that's before you today. And then we were hit with COVID, which has really been difficult to manage through these almost last year. And so, fortunately, we weren't trying to manage the cannabis industry, and they've got dedicated resources as we were trying to manage through the COVID situation. But what I would really like to share is some exciting things that the department has done, and that's one of them is implementing credit cards. That is something the department has wanted to do for a long period of time, and we finally have that. So we're pleased to be able to, as of December 2020, for most of our tax types, especially in our online tax portal, we're able to accept credit card payments. And the way that works, I'll share a little bit about that. A taxpayer can go into our online system and they select their payment by credit card. There is a 2.2% convenience fee, but that is not paid by the department, it's paid by the taxpayer. The department does receive 100% of the tax revenue, and our payment processor collects the 2.2% fee so that it doesn't pass through the department. And so being able to provide that opportunity for our taxpayers to be able to do that. And that is definitely something we have been working on again for some time. So we're grateful to be able to return our focus back to the Department of Taxation and its resources to be able to collect the $7.2 billion that we do collect on an annual basis.
Great, thank you. Madam Chair, could I ask one more question, please?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The other question was about the tax amnesty program. I know you said it just started February 1st, but I think there were some efforts to publicize it. And I just wondered if delinquent taxpayers have come forward to express interest or ask, and just a general update for any conclusions you could make 4 days into the program.
Again, Melanie Young, for the record, yes, we're pleased to be able to offer tax amnesty program to be able to assist taxpayers during this time. We have had quite a bit of outreach. We're getting a lot of responses and hits through our social media and the media outlets that have provided that information. I did a presentation recently at the Nevada Taxpayers Association. We're hoping to try and reach as many outlets as we can so that we can relieve the taxpayers of the additional penalties and interests that have been imposed while they are allowed to just pay the base taxes for any period that they are owing right now. So it is early to tell how much we're going to be able to collect through this process. There's no indicators right now that tells us that we're not going to be able to collect what's on the books through the Economic Forum. And so what we'd like to do is be able to provide information on going through this process. So a little bit of details about our distribution process. I'll stop and kind of go into that just for a moment. So right now we are processing December's tax returns. So each taxpayer has 1 month from the close of the month that they would owe taxes for. So the month of January, by the last day of that month, they will have paid and remitted their tax returns for the month of December. So we probably won't have really good data on the tax amnesty program. We're anticipating in mid to late April. And so we'll be able to provide a better update at that point in time.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. And before we move on to Assemblywoman Kasama, I want to go back to the amnesty. Now, did we have the amnesty in for the Great Recession? And if so, okay. And do you or your staff, can you give us a little bit of general information about how it went when we did it then?
Yes, thank you, Melanie Young, Executive Director for the Nevada Department of Taxation. During the Great Recession, we held 2 amnesty periods. And unfortunately, I don't have those at my fingertips, and maybe I could have some staff look that up for me real quick. But it was 2008 and 2010. And it was a significant benefit to the state to operate that program back then.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, if you can get us that information, unless Mr. Dindon, that information you have off the top of your head?
It is not, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Because the interesting thing is for us is, yeah, taxation would have to provide that, because we really see when the amnesty payments are being made, they're being made against the tax for which the amnesty paid. So they get blended in with the other tax payments. So yeah, we would need that information to be provided by the Department of Taxation.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and with that, we'll move on to Assemblywoman Kasama.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Director Young, for a great presentation, and you made it through without drinking water. I was very impressed. So my question is on slide 19, under the commerce tax, and you kind of rattled this off quickly, and I really liked the information where you talked about the amount distributed to the general fund, $205 million. And you broke it down by retail, wholesale, manufacturing, and hospitality. What was the retail? Was that 41.2 million or was that 41.2%?
Thank you, Melanie Young, Executive Director for the Nevada Department of Taxation. Let me get back to my notes really quick for that section. So the top 3 industries made up half of the distribution. So in fiscal year 20, we collected 41.2 million for retail trade. It was 36.8 million for wholesale trade and 20.4 million for manufacturing. And then in prior years, the commerce tax distribution accommodations section held that 3rd highest spot, but because of the pandemic, they fell to 4th.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Russell. If you don't mind, I'll just the piggyback onto the question and then the response by Director Young, that if any of the members are interested in additional information on the commerce tax and the statistics on that, at the November 10th meeting of the Economic Forum, there was a significant amount of information that was compiled on the history of that tax from FY 2016 through FY 2020, which actually there are tables there that break it out by the 26 categories, as well as there's some pie charts. And so again, that is available on the Legislative Council Bureau websites under interim committees, or if any of the members are specifically interested, they can email me and we can send you the link to that information. So I just thought, since Assemblywoman Kasama asked that question, and if there is interest in that, we have compiled quite a bit of actual statistical data for that tax. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Great, thank you. Do we have any other questions? Okay, I was wondering, and I don't know if this is more enforcement or if you'd have this information, Executive Director Young, over the last year with COVID, are you seeing an uptick in black market with as far as liquor and cigarettes go, or is that staying about the same as usual?
Thank you, Assemblywoman Cohen, for the question. Melanie Young, Executive Director for the Nevada Department of Taxation. I'm not sure if my deputy, Terry Upton, has a response to that, but if she does, I'd like to have her try. If not, we can get that information for you.
Thank you. Terry Upton for the record. In fiscal year 2019, we did 686 inspections, and 14% of those inspections resulted in a seizure. And in 2020, we did 677 inspections that year, and 9% resulted in a seizure. So for the last 6-month period, we've had 407 inspections with 18% resulting in seizure. So there has been an uptick in that black market.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, I don't think I see any other questions. So thank you, Director Young. Thank you, Deputy Hughes and Deputy Upton. We really appreciate the information, and we'll be hearing from you again in this session, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. I'm having some trouble with my mouse. So with that, we will move on to a presentation from the Gaming Control Board. So presenting is board member Terry Johnson, as well as Michael Lawton and Michael Morton, who are both senior research specialists with the administration division. So gentlemen, whenever you're ready.
I'll get started. Good afternoon, Chair Cohen, members of the Assembly Committee on Revenue, and Chair Neal, members of the Senate Revenue and Economic Development Committee. My name is Terry Johnson. I am a member of the Nevada Gaming Control Board. I'm here this afternoon on behalf of Gaming Control Board Chairman Bryn Gibson. Chairman Gibson regrets that he was not able to join you this afternoon. He does look forward to and wants you to know that he looks forward to working with the committees over the course of the legislative session on matters pertinent to gaming and our gaming regulatory system here. So I am joined this afternoon by Mr. Michael Morton, one of our senior research analysts at the Gaming Control Board. I believe Mr. Lawton had to leave and was not able to stay, unfortunately. But we'll give you a brief overview of the gaming regulatory system here in the state of Nevada, as well as the revenue that we collect on behalf of the state, and also give you an update on online gaming. And so we do have a presentation that has been prepared for you and provided. And so we'll be brief in going through that and look forward to discussing it with you and any questions that you might have thereafter or during. All right, so I wanted to give you an overview of just how the gaming regulatory system is structured before we talk about the revenue that's collected into that system. But we do have a two-tiered system. You hear a lot about the Gaming Control Board and the Gaming Commission, and they are two separate entities. The Gaming Control Board having day-to-day operation that it administers and day-to-day supervision over the folks that carry that out. And so we'll talk a little bit about how the Gaming Control Board is structured and the duties that it administers as well. But the Gaming Control Board does conduct the investigations and audits that are out there and makes recommendations on licensing matters and provides that day-to-day 24/7 enforcement of the gaming laws and regulations that are out there, as well as being the body responsible for collecting the fees and taxes on behalf of the state. The Gaming Commission, comprised of 5 persons, in contrast with the 3 persons that serve on the Gaming Control Board. The Gaming Commission essentially disposes of the matters that the Gaming Control Board forwards to it for recommended action. So you can think of the two-tiered system as one body that proposes one body that disposes, and it is the commission that has the final say on all matters of licensing, disciplinary issues, policy formulation, including the authority solely to enact gaming-related regulations. In terms of the more broader picture of what the regulatory structure looks like for gaming in the state of Nevada, there's an additional component as well. And so I've talked about the Gaming Control Board and the Gaming Commission. There's a third body, the Gaming Policy Committee, and it is comprised of members of the legislature, members of the gaming community, as well as tribal representatives and manufacturers that work in the gaming space as well. So it is a broadly representative body that meets to provide policy advice and recommendations to the Gaming Control Board and the Gaming Commission. I believe the last matter they took up as part of their policy discussions was related to gaming policy and cannabis, and that was perhaps within the last 3 years or so. They have also previously made recommendations related to online gaming, daily fantasy sports. So that is a place where just a gathering of ideas and input from the public and other interested stakeholders takes place, and policy recommendations ensue thereafter. The governor does make appointments to all of those bodies, the Gaming Control Board, the Gaming Commission, as well as the Gaming Policy Committee, and the governor serves as the chair of the Gaming Policy Committee. So our mission, just briefly stated, is to provide anything related to gaming, all the persons involved in gaming, employed in gaming, gaming locations, practices, associations, anything related to the conduct of gaming. The statutory mission is to provide for the strict regulation of all involved with the objective of ensuring the integrity and stability and the reputation that has been hard-won throughout this country and throughout the world for the seriousness with which we take gaming regulation. And obviously, we have a critical role to perform in ensuring that we collect gaming taxes and fees and do so in a timely manner and an accurate manner for the benefit of all involved. We do have offices located throughout the state. The bulk of our personnel are in the Las Vegas area, followed by Carson City. Our enforcement division, and I'll talk just in a moment about what the different divisions do, so you'll have an idea of that. But they actually have locations throughout the state in the 5 locales that you see listed there. We have a little under 400 employees on a full-time basis throughout the state. One of the divisions that you've heard about so far is our operational unit here, our administration division, and they are the administrative backbone of our operations, all of the financial issues, budget issues, our records retention, just giving us the operational support that we need to carry out our business on a day-to-day basis, including human resources and providing that training function as well. Our audit division, those are the folks that are out there auditing the gaming companies on a day-to-day basis. They actually will touch just about every large gaming enterprise at least once every 2 to 3 years to ensure that the taxes are being collected. And we kind of break them up into licensees that gross more than $6.5 million per year and versus licensees that gross less than $6.5 million in gaming revenue per year. And we have 2 divisions that work on each of those sets of licensees respectively to ensure proper collections. Our enforcement division is a 24/7, 365 operation. That's our in-house unit of certified peace officers, post-certified peace officers, and they do everything from conducting criminal and regulatory investigations themselves, oftentimes working with our partners in law enforcement at the local level, as well as other state and federal entities. They will conduct investigations ranging from tax fraud to anti-money laundering provisions to slot cheats, to persons trying to defraud gaming establishments. And so they are also involved in arbitrating disputes between patrons and gaming licensees that might arise in the course of play, and they respond when called upon by statute to assist in the resolution of those types of disputes. Our investigations division, they, before the pandemic, would travel far and wide to investigate thoroughly the backgrounds of any persons looking to do business in the gaming industry in the state of Nevada. They conduct all of the initial investigations of applicants and forward their recommendations through reports onto the board. And thereafter, they have a monitoring role, particularly as it relates to publicly traded corporations, to ensure that their activities comport with state laws, especially, and any of their subsidiaries as well involved in the gaming industry. The Tax and License Division is our unit that collects those gaming taxes, fees, penalties, interest, fines, and especially focuses on the smaller entities. And so we do generally have two classes of licensees, non-restricted and restricted. Non-restricted being your larger casinos that you're most frequently, rather most familiar with in all likelihood, and our restricted locations are your bars, restaurants, taverns, convenience stores, supermarkets that have slot machines only and 15 or fewer in number. And so our Tax and License Division mostly handles that latter group. And they are also responsible for ensuring that if the Board Commission imposes conditions on a licensee as part of the process of being able to operate in Nevada, our Tax and License Division is responsible for ensuring that those conditions are satisfied and monitored for compliance, as well as monitoring tribal gaming compacts between Nevada and tribal entities. And on that last point, somewhat related, just a few months ago, I believe it was in October, the Gaming Control Board and Gaming Commission licensed the first tribal entity, the Mohegan tribe, to operate a gaming operation in the Las Vegas Strip corridor for the first time. And then we have our technology division. And so before any game, device, software, what have you, can go on the floor, we have folks that do the testing to make sure that it meets with certain criteria before being public facing. And they also work with the independent test labs as well to ensure that products and devices and equipment are up to the standards set by Nevada before they make it onto the floor. And they are our eyes and ears in terms of monitoring trends and providing policy recommendations on potential changes to technology-related provisions. And they also provide forensic support. So if there's an investigation taking place, whether it be on a slot cheat or someone trying to manipulate games or devices otherwise, oftentimes our technology division will respond and assist in the investigation of those activities. And now we're going to talk a little bit about the revenue that is collected and go through some slides that we've prepared to assist the committees in that front. So we look at over the past 7 or 8 fiscal years, and you'll see the general fund appropriations that have been made to the Gaming Control Board and the Gaming Commission to carry out its duties, as well as the other funds at the boards and commission's disposal. And that includes everything from the fees that employees pay to work in the gaming industry. You may have heard the term over the years, a work card or a gaming card, to work in the gaming industry. They pay a fee to do so, and that's what that relates to, as well as fees that we might conduct of applicants for conducting investigations, and those gaming lab fees as well. And Nevada is an exporter of its technical competencies by way of the training fees that we charge. So we might have jurisdictions that want to learn about the Nevada gaming regulatory system, and our staff will provide training for a fee, as well as working with universities both here in Nevada and elsewhere as necessary to provide training assistance on gaming regulatory systems. This chart shows the revenues collected for FY20 by geographic area for Clark, Washoe, Elko, South Lake Tahoe, and Carson Valley. And that showed for fiscal year 20, $617 million having been collected in total gaming collections. And then this breaks it down by category. And so the largest category being the percentage fees, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second, and the source of those percentage fees and how that breaks down. But other fees collected are listed there. The next largest source being the live entertainment tax. And I'll go through real briefly what those dollar amounts look like in greater detail. But you have there for your partaking the various categories that we collect gaming revenue in. This shows the total collections as well as collections based on some sources, the percentage fees, the live entertainment tax. And just as a bit of background, I was listening to Director Young's remarks earlier. For members that might not be aware, the Gaming Control Board and the Department of Taxation essentially split responsibilities for collecting the live entertainment tax. If the live entertainment is provided at an establishment that has gaming, the Gaming Control Board will include those tax collections as part of its responsibilities. And for non-gaming related live entertainment tax, those would be collected and administered by the Department of Taxation. And we do have a statutory charge to work cooperatively with each other in the administration of the live entertainment tax statutes to provide for consistency in that administration and collection. And we work closely with them in doing so, including in the last few years with some revisions to the live entertainment tax that came out of the 2015 session. So the percentage fees I talked about, the collections that are there, obviously a decline in FY20 versus FY19. This is the non-restricted licensees and the monthly taxable revenue generated based on those tables that you see there. So most of them are going to be in that category of 6.75% of all revenue exceeding $134,000, resulting in the percentage fees collected that you see there. The live entertainment tax, as I mentioned, for live entertainment occurring on the premises of a gaming establishment. And so this has been an extremely piece of helpful legislation that was enacted in 2015, Senate Bill 266, that really cleaned up a lot of the some of the ambiguities in the statute. And not only that, it really reduced the amount of litigation and contested cases that we had over interpretations of when the live entertainment tax applies. Now it's just a straight 9% when there is an admission charge that's levied. And we, by and large, do not have the same degree of challenges to those tax determinations or litigations in front of the Gaming Commission or in the courts when there are disputes over live entertainment tax. So that legislation was extremely helpful to the Gaming Control Board. And we really appreciated the opportunity to work with the legislature to make those changes and then work with the Department of Taxation to promulgate regulations to implement that legislation. So these are non-restricted fees on slots that are charged. And so that's based on a quarterly fee of $20 per machine by those larger non-restricted licensees. And then you have the restricted slot fees as well for those smaller locations that I talked about, taverns, convenience stores, laundromats, any place that has just slot machines and fewer than 15. Non-restricted game fees. So for the number of games that a non-restricted licensee might operate, mostly table games we're talking here, they pay taxes on that. And these are the amounts that reflect that. And then advanced license fees, basically your prepays that a licensee might pay once they receive a gaming license, and that would be equal to 3 times the amount of percentage fees anticipated to be owed. And then you have some collections for manufacturers and distributors. And so when we talk about the gaming industry, we tend to think of it in terms of casinos and perhaps to a smaller degree, the restricted locations, but we actually have probably a little under 3,000 gaming licensees throughout the state of Nevada, in addition to the casinos and restricted locations. But it includes everything from service providers to equipment manufacturers and device distributors. And so these are some of the other licensees that are governed by the Gaming Control Act and the fees that would be paid, as well as those who operate slot routes. And so if you have a licensee that's responsible for taking care of the machines at a convenience store or restaurant, sometimes if you see those machines inside those different locations, the operator of that business might not be the gaming licensee. It might be a slot route operator who instead is the licensee and merely goes from location to location, servicing those machines, collecting the monies from them, and remitting the taxes that are owed. And so those slot operator licensees as well pay fees. These are annual slot taxes based on $250 per slot machine, based on all the amounts paid by all licensees. And you see some information there related to how those monies are distributed once collected. The first $5 million going to the Capital Construction Fund for hydration, followed by another 1/5 going to the Special Capital Construction Fund. And then the balance of it is deposited into the DSA. We also have that annual games fee based on the number of games and non-restricted licensees operating, and those are split, in this case, between Nevada's 17 counties on an equal basis. And then we have a requirement placed upon licensees that if they are in possession of slot machine wagering vouchers where monies are owed but not yet paid, not yet redeemed, they have a requirement to remit 75% of the value of those unredeemed slot machine vouchers quarterly. And this amount reflects the fiscal year collections of about $10 million for the last 2 fiscal years for expired slot machine wagering vouchers. Other revenues include operators of interactive gaming licenses, so your online activities, and we'll give you an update in a few moments about online gaming. And then those who manufacture those online interactive gaming systems pay fees as well, and these amounts reflect the amounts paid. All right, so this is the revenue collected for interactive gaming service provider license. And as I mentioned a few moments ago, there are others involved in the regulation and activities of the gaming industry, and those who are service providers of various types pay an annual fee for the license and privilege of providing those services. And these are the collections for FY19 and 20, $53,000 and $13,000 respectively. And so that is a general overview of the Gaming Control Board, the Gaming Commission, the Gaming Policy Committee, how the agencies are organized and structured, and basically what we do on a day-to-day basis. We continue to do business as required under the statute. We continue to collect the amounts due the state, and we continue to regulate the gaming industry with professional, timely, strict regulation to implement the public policy mandates of this state and maintain the integrity of regulated gaming and the reputation of regulated gaming here in this state for our visitors, as well as our gaming employees, to ensure that they have the resources that they need to be successful in their professional endeavors. So Mr. Morton will finish up by giving you an update on online gaming in Nevada, and we look forward to the committee's questions. Mr. Morton?
Thank you, Member Johnson. Good evening, committee members. This is Mike Morton with the Gaming Control Board for the record. The committees have asked for a brief history and summary and trends of online gaming, both here in Nevada and nationally. The Nevada Legislature first authorized interactive gaming in 2001, which allowed gaming licensees to use communications technology, namely the internet, to place bets or wagers and to display games over the internet. However, online gaming as we know it today was the result of the legislature passing Assembly Bill number 258 in 2011. This bill specifically added internet poker to the definition of interactive gaming. When the states of Delaware and New Jersey passed their own versions of online gaming legislation in 2012 and 2013, the Nevada legislature passed Assembly Bill number 114, which authorized the governor to enter into interstate agreements with other jurisdictions for the governance of interstate interactive gaming, or internet gaming as it's known in other jurisdictions. Pursuant to the authority granted by the Nevada legislature, Governor Sandoval entered into the multi-state internet gaming agreement with Delaware on February 25th, 2014. New Jersey became a party to that agreement 3 years later. The multi-state internet gaming agreement allows patrons who reside in member states to avail themselves to patrons in other member states for internet poker and other internet gaming. The agreement also requires its member states to enter into an association, set forth an operating agreement for the association, and to facilitate the implementation of internet poker and other internet gaming for patrons in the member states to use. One fact to note is that the agreement currently authorizes internet poker in all 3 member states. However, it only authorizes 11 other types of internet gaming in Delaware and New Jersey, since NRS 463.101645 currently defines interactive gaming to only include internet poker here in Nevada. The association that the multi-state agreement requires was formed as a limited liability company in Delaware in February 2014, when the agreement was initially signed, and is known as the Multi-State Internet Gaming Association, or MSIGA. After years of negotiations, the operating agreement for MSIGA was entered into by the 3 member states on November 7th, 2019. On this slide, I've provided the committees with a summary of national trends in online gaming. New technologies and the repeal of the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act of 1992, also known as PASPA, have caused multiple other jurisdictions in the United States to consider and implement various forms of online gaming. As of today, there have been discussions with the state of Pennsylvania regarding its interest in becoming a party to the multi-state agreement, and the state of Michigan recently passed online gaming legislation that allows the state to enter into interstate agreements. As everyone knows, with the COVID-19 pandemic, the world turned upside down, but the pandemic has increased an already high interest by jurisdictions in online gaming. So with that, the board is here and happy to answer any questions the committee members may have.
Thank you, Mr. Morton and Mr. Johnson. I do have some people in line for questions. Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering, you had made reference to a tribal casino in the Strip corridor, and I was just wondering, I wasn't aware of that. And so if you could just give me some additional information about that, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, Terry Johnson for the record, and that was at the, it used to be the Hard Rock over on Harmon and Paradise, and has been rebranded as a Virgin Hotels property, and it will have as its gaming operator the Mohegan Tribe.
Thank you. I did not realize that. Appreciate that.
Thank you. And Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it. I think this first question is for Mr. Johnson, probably. I wanted to ask about sports wagering. I know there's, I think around the country, there's sort of been this idea that sports wagering is going to be the panacea for all state budget problems, which, I think is not the case. It's not a huge amount of revenue, but I wondered on that chart you showed, collections by category, is the revenue generated from sports wagering, would that fit into other collections? And do you happen to know off the top of your head, even a ballpark of what the amount was that was collected from sports wagering in the state?
Cherry Johnson for the record. And while I look for that and Mr. Morton looks through it, and will probably get to it quicker than I do, I will concur at the outset with your thoughts about whether or not sports betting is going to be a budget panacea. I think you will see in jurisdictions like, for example, New Jersey, they are doing extremely well in sports betting, and they were, as you will recall, the primary drivers of getting the repeal of PASPA at the U.S. Supreme Court, and they have done very well. Kudos to them for their successes, but part of their success is based on the fact that they are surrounded by non-sports betting jurisdictions that have very large populations. And so people in New York will catch subway or other public transportation and ride from New York into New Jersey, not even get off of the public transportation, but merely stay there long enough to place their wager online and then go back across the state line into New York. So I think when you see other states start to get into sports betting, you'll see that those numbers start to level off in New Jersey. It is proliferating around the country in significant form, and I would concur that it's not going to be the panacea. I know that on a percentage basis, it's about a little under 3% of the total amount collected, because I frequently include a pie chart in various presentations showing what a small sliver it is to Nevada, because people were concerned that it would have this significantly negative effect on the fiscal operations of Nevada. But it's a very small slice, and I don't know if Mr. Morton was able to identify the particular figures in that time period.
Mike Morton for the record. I do not have the sports betting wagering fees broken out, but that is a quick report that I can run and get to the committee tomorrow.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Thank you so much. I guess maybe everything is legal in New Jersey after all. I just was fascinated by this folks in New York driving to the tunnel to go sports bet. And I'm anxious to see what our handle is here for the big game here on Sunday and how that might be affected by the pandemic. Madam Chair, could I ask one more quick question? I promise it'll be quick.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, I think this is for either one, but I'm just very interested in the online gaming compact. I know when the legislation was passed in 2013, there was, big hope that multiple states would join in, and this would sort of rival what used to be the size of the black market operators, Poker Stars, what have you. And it doesn't seem like that's come to pass. Obviously, New Jersey jumping on the compact's been huge in terms of population, but what are the prospects going forward? Do we expect states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, perhaps New York at some point to join those compacts? And, if so, do we think that would have some kind of significant revenue bump to the state? I know poker also is not a huge margin game in terms of the rake that's taken, but just wanted to kind of get your take on where that might be going in the next 10 years or so. I really would have thought with the pandemic there would be more online poker happening, but it doesn't seem like it went that way.
For Terry Johnson for the record, I think if there is going to be an increase in activity, now is the time, as jurisdictions around the country look at expanding their offering of legal wagering. I think you had a factor back in 2011, 2013, what have you. There was that uncertainty at the federal level about what was legal and what was still illegal. And I think with the changeover from the administration at that time to the administration at the federal level prior to this one, and now to the current present federal administration, I think you're going to see some movement along those lines. Obviously, here in Nevada, we just entered into the online poker. And so that's a policy decision as to whether we should expand those offerings beyond poker and try to avail ourselves of other opportunities. And as you know, we are population challenged here in Nevada, and so that lack of liquidity has had some competitive disadvantages to us. We don't have the population of a New Jersey, definitely don't have the population of a Pennsylvania, but we do have the reputational expertise, and we do bring things to the table that I think perhaps add some additional legitimacy to some of the compact participants that might be in the offering. So I would be optimistic that we can see some expansion progress here in this year, starting this year.
And
you so
this
much.
is Mike Morton for the record. I will add to that the discussions with Pennsylvania have been going on across multiple federal administrations. They were very close to joining, and then when reinterpretations of the Wire Act started a few years ago, they got cold feet. So now that the Wire Act decision in the First Federal Circuit seems to have been finalized, I anticipate those talks starting again. Michigan, they just passed their online gaming legislation less than a month ago, but I do know that they modeled that legislation off of NRS. We had been in talks with them. We gave them some support and some expertise on how to go about doing that. So I imagine that those two states will probably be the first ones that you might see join the compact and add some more liquidity to that market.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
With that, we will go to a question from Assemblywoman Kasama.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Member Johnson, for the information. I appreciate that so much. My question is on the revenues collected by type under annual games fee. It says that the collections are earmarked and split equally among Nevada's 17 counties. I'm just wondering, since the revenues are probably the great portion is collected by Clark and Washoe, I'm just wondering why those revenues are not dispersed more on a percentage basis from where they're collected versus evenly split on the counties. What's the history for that, or is there any explanation for that?
Terry Johnson, for the record, if there is an explanation, which I'm sure there is, I don't have it. I can certainly look into that further for you to see if we have some additional background on that policy question.
Thank you.
I'm happy, Mike Morton for the record. I'm happy to get that research to the committee. I know it's statutory based, so it's not a decision of the board, but it's done in statute.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. With that, I have a question. I don't know exactly how to say this because I don't know the terms because I'm not young. So at the school at UNLV, gaming, or the center on gaming at UNLV, I know over the last couple of years, they've been looking at more of the trends with the understanding that young people today, and especially over the next few years, are not going to be interested in gaming at casinos the way we traditionally think of what we've had to date. It'll be more gaming than gambling, for certainly. So with that in mind, if what are you doing to kind of prepare yourself for when we see that trend actually take hold, and where it's not people sitting at a craps table or sitting in front of a slot machine, but doing some other type of gaming as their form of gambling?
So Terry Johnson, for the record, I think one of the things we do is look at our regulatory processes and make sure that they're not a barrier to innovation. And so we rely on the industry to bring forward concepts and ideas for making gaming activities more attractive to millennials, for example. And so we don't necessarily commit ourselves as the regulators to developing new games or new devices that might attract them. That's the job of the marketplace to maintain its competitive. But to assist the marketplace, we certainly let the word go forward that we have a regulatory structure that's nimble and responsive, and we can get products or get matters through the pipeline fairly efficiently with our system that we have here in Nevada. And a large part of that is the considerable amount of responsibility and discretion that the legislature has given the Gaming Commission to make ready approvals of new proposals and new games and new devices. And so there was an item on the agenda of the Gaming Control Board just yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, where an applicant who has been working on essentially gamblifying video games. And so taking those video game concepts and putting them onto slot machines. And so those types of activities will continue to be examined, and we will do our part that when the industry in maintaining its competitiveness amongst millennials especially, when they bring forward new proposals to help them thrive and be successful, we'll get it through and get it through quickly.
Okay, thank you. That's good to hear. I do not have anyone else down for questions, but I want to see if on video, anyone else? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much, Member Johnson, Mr. Morton, and Mr. Lawton. We appreciate the information and the important job that you're doing for the state. And with that, we're going to move on to the next part of our agenda. And I'd like to open the meeting for public comment. As a reminder, public comment may be limited based on the number of participants. Do we have anyone on the line?
Good evening, Chair. The public line is open and working. However, there are no callers at this time.
All right, okay. So with that, Chair Neal, any comments? Or any other members, any comments?
No, Madam Chair, I'm good.
Okay, then so for Assembly, our next meeting will be Tuesday, February 9th at 4 p.m. I believe the Senate will be the same day at 1. That concludes our meeting. We're adjourned for today. Bye.